Former military chiefs have claimed that Sir Keir Starmer is not being honest with the British public over defence spending, which rather makes redundant this speech.
We want a just and lasting peace, but that will not extinguish the Russian threat. And we need to be alert to that, because that's going to affect every single person in this room, every single person in this country. So we need to step up. That means on defence spending, we need to go faster. We've obviously made commitments already in relation to
let's get a word from Eliot Wilson, historian, military writer, contributing editor to the Defence on the Brink. Good afternoon to you, Eliot. Nice to have you with us again. There's Starmer talking, as most politicians will in this respect. No, it's all safe with us. We're going to be spending more and everything's fantastic. Your tanks are safe with us, etc. What is the truth in all of this then? How bad is it? And what bit in particular are the government not getting?
Well, Starmer's doing something even more bizarre than that. He said in that speech that, we need to go faster. He seems to have forgotten that he's the Prime Minister. He's the one in charge of...
Yes.
So it's entirely within control. The government has pledged to increase defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2027, and they're now talking about, maybe getting to 3% sometime in the next Parliament. That's welcome, but what he's forgetting is that we're looking at, over the next 4 years, probably £28 billion gap between commitments and resources. So that will be taken up entirely by any increase in defence spending. Some of the things I pointed out when I wrote for The Spectator this week. The RAF has no medium-lift helicopters. The Royal Navy can, at times, have access to maybe one or two of its 5 attack submarines. We have, Ajax, the armoured fighting vehicle, has cost us £5.5 billion so far. We don't have it in service. It may never go into service. We have huge capability gaps, and yet these are not being filled, and it's not coming about this with any kind of the depth of resources to fill them. Defence is about deterrence, and for deterrence you need the enemy, your opponents, to believe that they will come to serious harm if they try to attack you. And I don't think that the Russians are looking at NATO or the UK in particular at the moment thinking that we're a particularly serious threat to their well-being.
You also know how the parliamentary system works, of course, Eliot, so one would have to reasonably assume at some point a head honcho from the Defence Department would have sat down with the Prime Minister and explained all of this. I would find it extraordinary that the Prime Minister is not aware of everything you've just said.
Well, supposedly the Chief of the Defence Staff, Air Chief Marshal Sir Richard Knighton, and John Healey, the Defence Secretary, sat down with the Prime Minister before Christmas and explained the various sort of black holes in the public finances, to use his own phrase, that were coming up. And supposedly the Prime Minister's reaction was, I thought this had all been costed. And you think, well, wow, that's not really good enough. You're supposed to check on these things. If we look back at the Strategic Defence Review, which was published last summer, it talked quite a good game about needing to go further and faster, broader capabilities, a whole society conversation about the need for defence going through everything we do. That conversation just hasn't happened, and no one can lead that except the government. It's not going to happen by magic.
Of course.
We have an investment plan which has been kicked from, it was supposed to come out last autumn, we're now looking at maybe March this year. So industry can't really make any serious decisions about procurement, and defence procurement remains an incredibly inefficient and ludicrously expensive business.
Sorry to interject, Eliot, but isn't the obvious sort of elephant in the room, there literally is no money?
There is a problem that most of what the government has depended on for all of its plans across the board, from the NHS to education to defence, has been based on this idea of economic growth, and that growth just isn't coming. But at the end of the day, we can't say to our adversaries, I'm sorry, we would defend against you, but we don't have any money. You've got to prioritise. And it's difficult to see, although this is not an easy case to make to the public, which is why the government needs to lead this conversation. It's not easy to see what would come further up the list than being able to defend our country and our interests around the world against aggression from foreign powers and non-state actors as well, than defence. That's the foundation on which everything else is built.
Yeah. Could a Prime Minister, if they really wanted to, and obviously the curious thing about governments running out of money is that there is always somewhere some money. There's all sorts of systems and mechanisms, of course, to put things on the credit card, as it were. Could Keir Starmer tomorrow, if he wanted to, order 17 aircraft carriers, 500 Chinooks, a load of jets, and 5,000 Sherman tanks, just for the retro fans out there?
I mean, there are ways of doing it. There are interesting plans being discussed about, sort of leveraging different borrowing mechanisms. The EU is doing quite a lot of that, but of course we're not party to that, and we've been asked for many, many billions of pounds to join in their procurement lending scheme. But I think the problem is deeper than that. The problem is that it's not just about signing off an order now, though we need to do that on a lot of things. It's the fact that it's going to take so long to get anywhere towards a credible deterrence.
Yeah.
Now, that goes back decades and decades. We can look at the last government, who made several mistakes in this regard, and we can look at the Labour government before that, who made several mistakes. But we are where we are. And we know what the threat is. We keep being told what the threat is, and yet we seem curiously reluctant to match our resources to what the real threat is. Because the truth is that we may not actually be at war with Russia, for example, but there is a good argument that Dr. Fiona Hill, one of the Strategic Defence reviewers, said that they're at war with us. They are poisoning people on the streets of Britain. They're attacking our critical national infrastructure. They're undertaking cyber attacks on us. We are not at peace with them. And NATO has said that it needs to get to 5% of GDP defence spending by 2035. We've said we'll match that. Even that, I think, is probably an underestimation. But there's no indication that there's a real plan to get there. There's just a sort of notion that, yes, we'll do more. But how, when, and where?
That's a great point to finish on, Eliot. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Eliot Wilson, historian, military writer, and